am so thrilled to bring out the amazing team behind Monarch. Chris Black, Mari Yamamoto, Ronna Kress, and the great Sean Konrad. We're talking about collaboration. Chris, if you could talk about the collaboration that began even before the show started.
I remember the very first meeting I had, it was March of 2020. It was the last in-person meeting I had before, it was literally 2 weeks before everything shut down. And I met with an executive at Legendary, our producing studio, named Nick Pepper, who I had worked with before, who I had known for years. And he's like, we have this Monsterverse. It's a huge, really important property for us. We've been trying to develop it as a series. And just been having a hard time kind of dialing in what the show is. And Matt Fraction had been working on it. My skill set was hour-long television. And they said, can you come in and collaborate with Matt and see if we can figure out what the show is? And Matt is brilliant, talented, funny, smart, devilish, evil, and great to work with. And he and I just got on like a house fire, immediately. And sort of saw, and I think once we figured out it couldn't be a show about monsters. Monsters obviously are a huge part of it and a part of what the appeal of the franchise is and why it's so much fun to watch. But, we knew it had to be about a group of people who live in a world where monsters exist. And once we kind of dialed in, it's about this family, it's about this young woman who discovers her father's secret, and then she discovers she has a brother she didn't know about, and they launch off on this adventure together, then we were kind of off to the races, and Legendary was behind it and very excited, and Apple was incredibly supportive. And Apple, it's this big, kind of monster-driven film franchise. And when we started focusing on this group of people in this family, they were like, that's it, that's an Apple show.
Right, it's sort of an upending expectation, too, because I don't think anyone goes into a Godzilla movie and go, wow, the people, we really loved it. The guy had a problem with his taxes, and we were so invested,
Well, you don't want to upend the expectations too much because people want to see Godzilla,
yes.
And it's you don't want them to come and be disappointed and go, where are the monsters, Yeah. So it was a bit of a balancing act, and Sean can talk about it, too. Obviously, Godzilla is expensive, so yes. It becomes a question of balancing between the character storytelling that excited us as writers and putting the spectacle on the screen in a way that we could afford. And then we had a wonderful cast that it wouldn't have worked. I mean, that cast, obviously Mari's here and Ronna, the casting director, that cast was a gift to a writer.
Yes. Well, let's talk about the cast and the casting and how you talk about collaboration, how you found all of these amazing people. Chris, I assume you were involved, at least tangentially, in the casting and being shown who was coming in and all of that and what that process was like. And also how you landed on Mari.
Yeah, I mean, well, it was a challenging, Ronna can talk about it, it was a challenging show to cast, and we really relied on people who knew how to do it and do it really well and have years of experience doing it, and Ronna came in and just gifted us this group of people.
Thank you. We had the great fortune that Legendary and Apple gave us a very long time to cast. And so it was about 5 months. I had a great collaborator in Japan, but we looked all over the world. And, each part had its own struggle, and especially with Mari's role and Anna, because we essentially had to find two amazing Japanese actresses who were fluent in English but could also speak Japanese. And, that's not a massive talent pool, and we were just so fortunate to land on both of them so quickly. And then it was during COVID, so everything was on Zoom. But when it came time to finalize our decision about Mari, Wyatt really insisted that we do it in person. So we COVID tested, they came to my office, but everybody was already in Vancouver, so our director was on Zoom, but the three of us were in the office together, and it was great. It was, it made my heart warm because you finally got to really see the chemistry between those two people, and it was obviously fantastic.
So you knew it was going to work.
Right away.
Okay. And Mari, what was that process like for you?
The audition process?
Yeah.
with these things, you just let it go and pretend it never happened. And, I didn't hear anything, so I was like, yeah, it didn't happen, it's fine. And then 5 months later, they wanted me to do a callback. So I was like, oh, it's still going. So then it just kind of kept going. We had maybe like 5 auditions or so. I think I had like 5 reads or something. And then the final step was with Wyatt. And I thank you for that, because she just sat us down and like had us hang out for a while, and we got to know each other a little bit, and then we just really got along well from the beginning, and then we did the read, so we eased into it, and yeah, it was a really good, like, fun chemistry read.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Was there any trepidation joining this incredible franchise?
Trepidation.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of pressure around Godzilla, the Godzilla sort of IP and franchise. Being a Japanese person, it means so much to us as a people, I feel. You grow up with the iconography, you grow up with the meaning behind it. The origin story goes back to, the roots of our modern world in Japan, right? With the post-war context. So, the war context, I guess. So, you do tensen up, you're like, oh, this is big, this is everything to us in a way. So yeah, not trepidation, more responsibility and excitement. Yeah.
And Chris, do you want to talk about the collaboration that you had with the actors? Because I talked to Kurt and Wyatt, and they said, we were kind of a pain in the ass, wanting to make the show the best it could be, and so I imagine there is a lot of collaboration with your performers as well.
Well, yeah, there has to be. I mean, on any show, it's you write the characters and you see them a certain way, and you go, oh, I created them. Matt and I created the show, and I wrote the pilot. But then until actors come and breathe life into them, they take on a life. You lose at a certain point. You have to kind of let ownership of them go a little bit, And Kurt, Kurt is Kurt. I mean, Kurt is an iconic movie star, with decades and decades of experience, and he knows. The great thing about Kurt is he knows exactly what he brings. He knows exactly what the audience expectation. He knows what his fans expect from him. He knows how to present himself and to inhabit that character and make that character an iconic Kurt Russell character. Yeah. So I think at a certain point you have to let, and he was, it was challenging working with him at times, because he's very granular about like the scene work. It's like some of the best scene work in the season, in my opinion, is the work that Kurt and Mari did together in the season finale. And a lot of that, we wrote a script that there were scenes on the page, but I think so much of what that is on the screen and what works about it and what's great about it is kind of Kurt and Mari and the actors kind of workshopping it, like making it. If you've seen that last episode, there's a whole bit where Shaw, Kurt's character, doesn't want to reveal himself to her. She doesn't understand that there's been this time dilation and that he's older than he is, and that he's holding himself back out of sight, trying to prepare her. And that was all Kurt. That was like his pitch. He was passionate about it. This is how I would present myself to her. And it was like, I didn't write that. That was just him. And it was, so yeah, it was, in that sense, in terms of a collaboration, very much so, yeah.
I hope everyone's seen this show. We're getting into
spoiler
territory.
Sorry. I think the statute of limitations.
Yeah, I think we're okay. Yeah, Mari's out of the underground world. But you want to talk about shooting that scene with Kurt? Yeah.
There was a lot of talk about pressure on that scene. We really had to deliver it because the whole season was kind of leading up to it, and Kurt kept telling me that, your face has been the only thing I've been thinking about shooting this entire season. It's all about you. And, I never interacted with him until the last episode. So that's when it all kind of had to come out, I guess. And I think everybody felt this pressure, and we had a lot of meetings about it. We had a lot of rehearsals. Andy Goddard, incredible director who did episode 9 and 10. And I think it was Matt Fraction on set at the time. The four of us were just kind of rehearsing it a lot, and like Chris said, there was a lot of things at that point in the shoot. It was the very last of it, so there was a lot of things that we wanted to say as our characters to each other in that scene. So for instance, him like wanting to protect my character from like this reality that awaits her, not wanting to reveal himself, and also things like me saying, I've been talking to you in my head this whole time, and him saying, you look exactly like the day I lost you. Like, I can't remember the exact lines, but there were things that...
How I saw you in my mind's eye.
Exactly, yeah, that's how he wanted to say that. But, you know, there were just things that would come out because we were so deep into our characters at that point. So you get to set and you look into Kurt Russell's eyes and you go somewhere. Yeah. He's that kind of an actor. Like we could just look at each other and do the scene over and over because we could just go somewhere every time, and it was different every time. And then Andy really worked on finding each moment because there's so much happening. So it was really about breaking it down moment by moment. And it's like, what is she feeling? Like it's the shock, but then it's the recognition, but then it's searching for him and then recognizing him again. So we really went through it moment by moment, and I think that's how we crafted that scene together, all of us, yeah.
Well, and you're extraordinary in that scene. It's like, I mean, you're good. I mean, we knew you're a great actor, and the whole season, all the work you did was amazing and incredible, and we loved working with you. And when I saw that scene on the mix stage, I was glad they had the lights down because I was crying like a baby. It's like, it's kind of like, holy crap. It's like, where is that coming from? It's amazing.
You don't really often get to act out a 70-year time travel, losing everybody and reuniting with like somebody who could have been the love of your life.
Again, spoiler alert.
Oh, yeah. So it was an incredible experience as an actor to get to live that out. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, again, that emotional bedrock. I mean, there's so much crazy stuff that happens in that episode, but those are the moments that really kind of affect you. Ronna, I wanted to ask, because obviously getting Kurt Russell on a TV show is a coup. You know, he kept telling me, I'm a movie guy. You know, I looked at it like a movie. That's my Kurt Russell impression. And obviously...
yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. And casting Anna, who, you know, did nothing after this, did not have a great year at all. But yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, she had done Shogun before us.
Oh, really?
We knew.
You knew. Oh, you knew.
We knew she had gotten that part, and I was tracking her the whole time. But she was also in Pachinko, and so there was a little bit of a hiccup with that, but we worked through it, fortunately. So for us, I feel like how lucky we are that,
absolutely.
You know, honestly, everybody in the cast. But the Wyatt-Kurt piece was a long road to hoe to get there, but it was totally worth it. I had heard that they wanted to act together, but they didn't want to be father and son. And I knew we had these two different time periods, so I pitched it to our group. And then we were hooked. And then we worked really hard to make it happen. And honestly, now that I've seen the show, and I had no real interaction with them once they get to the set, you know, like I'm in pre-production and then no one really remembers we were there.
We remember.
Thank you. But now that I've been listening to Kurt and Wyatt in their interviews talking about their process together, how they watched each other, how they listened to each other, and of course, I didn't think about any of that going into it. I just thought, oh, wouldn't it be great to see the two of them like this? So it just was... what an accomplishment to get them, and how great to have them in the show. It really made a difference.
And Kurt's just presence kind of brings you this kind of emotional shorthand, right? Of like, we're rooting for him, we're totally invested. How important was that casting to you, Chris?
Well, I mean, it was like pinch me, you know. Yeah. I mean, I grew up, I'm old enough to have grown up with Kurt in his Disney movies, you know, and then I was a huge fan of, obviously, his work with John Carpenter, you know, The Thing and Escape from New York, and, you know, when, you know, the idea of him and Wyatt doing it came up, we were like, seriously? Really? Would they do it? Would they do TV? It's like, great, how do we make that happen? Yeah, it was... Yeah.
Worth the effort, I think. Sean, let's talk about visual effects. You've been very patient down there.
All good.
This is a show where visual effects touches, you know, every element of it. What was the most daunting aspect of Monarch?
I mean, there's a lot of logistic stuff that is like, okay, you have to figure out how to communicate with the directors and the showrunner and everybody about, what is it we can afford for each of these creative beats, and then pare it down to the thing that is the most essential part, and then, bring it back up when that doesn't work, and it's this back and forth process with so many different stakeholders, and overall, this was one of the more, I don't want to say straightforward because it's an immensely complicated show, but one of the nice things about working on this project is that it was a very linear process versus a lot of other projects I've been a part of. So there wasn't a lot of going back to basics, reconceiving scenes, once we got into post, it was just we can let the visual effects vendors, all of the 16 different companies that worked on this project across the planet and all of the artists everywhere, they just had a pretty straightforward path to get the work done. So that was great. And then, creature design is always a really tricky thing. One, representing these classic Toho characters is an immense challenge, and representing, Kong on screen for the, single shot that we have at the end of the season.
Really spoilers now.
Yeah.
We're really getting into it, yeah.
Yeah, real spoilers. But yeah, no, I there's an immense pressure there, but then trying to find something that then can stand next to those creatures and feel, in the same world is also just a huge challenge.
And you're not just doing creatures, you're doing background replacements, you're augmenting shots. I mean, it runs the gamut, really.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things in the last episode that we were just talking about in that scene is, the entire time we're in this Axis Mundi, pseudo-hollow Earth world, we had to touch every single one of those photograph plates and get these big color palettes in the background to make it feel not just like we were shooting in a Pacific Northwest forest. And, one of the nice things about that scene even was we were able to in time with Leo's beautiful score, we were able to take that effect and swell it up a little bit in their embrace at in the sort of the climax of that scene, and working on those less obvious effects is really satisfying, especially when you can contribute 1% to an important emotional moment. It's really satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point, because you watch the show and the effects work is really feature caliber. I mean, it's really fantastic. But everyone looks at the monsters and all that kind of stuff. But the amount of work Sean and his team and the vendors had to do, driving shots, blue screens out windows, set extensions, hair fixes. It's the VFX, it touches almost every piece of the show. It's not just the big beauty shots of Godzilla rising up. It's a huge amount of work and time.
Well, Ronna, when you're casting this, do you tell people, there's going to be a lot of visual effects, you're going to be eaten by bugs or whatever? I mean, is that something that you...
No.
Okay, all right. Well, I would imagine that some actors...
know.
No, she didn't tell you. Okay.
No.
No, okay.
I was too worried
You
about
technically don't get
PC.
eaten.
You don't get eaten, but she's swallowed up by a swarm of bugs. But I mean, I imagine some actors are more comfortable with that kind of thing than others.
It's so interesting. We had zero conversations about that. Zero. I mean, I think Kurt and Wyatt...
Sorry.
I think Kurt and Wyatt probably had conversations with you guys about that. But no, honestly, I was so busy trying to put the family together and the pieces of the puzzle in that regard, because we were looking globally as well. That was really our focus in the process.
So, Mari, what did you think when you found out you were going to get eaten by bugs? What were you
Again, not
eaten by bugs? What would you... Consumed by a mass of bugs, yeah.
Exciting times, yeah.
You were excited to do it.
Yeah, I mean, every day was kind of like an adventure of you're going to get rigged and you're going to get dropped 40 feet. And it's okay, cool. I have a fear of heights and, speed, but I'll do it. And then it's extreme exposure therapy.
Yes,
yeah, and it was, we got the shot. It was a great shot of me falling to my death. So it was,
Yeah. I mean, Sean, I'm assuming you're interfacing with the performers too and saying, okay, and over there's a giant weasel coming out of the ground or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is the process is, we do previs before we shoot any of these major visual effects sequences. So in general, the best tool, in my opinion, is showing them what that is, and then they can start thinking about in their head how to react to it. And like even out of that process, like that scene where she drops away, there was a slightly different version of that where Lee's character didn't go down into the bottom, and Lee was like, Wyatt was like, there's no way I wouldn't go down, like that isn't true. And so we got together with Shackman and figured out, okay, what is he doing down here now? Something, we'd already storyboarded the scene, prevised, and so now we're like trying to think of, how do we fit him in and make that interesting? And we found really cool ways, and then that dynamic between the two of you, I think, like added so much more tension to the scene and more escalation, which was something that we were like really trying to figure out before we shot it, was how do we make this escalation seem, consequential. So, and then there's the stuff like, you put a tennis ball on a painter's pole and, for eye lines and all that stuff. And one scene, the scene in episode 6 in the desert of Godzilla rising up out of the mountain, we flew a drone to give for their eye lines. So basically he goes from ground, 15 feet is around where his eye is at, and then up to 300 feet to get to the top of where his like head is. So,
well, that's an interesting sort of collaboration though too, because you could have said like, no, absolutely not. We've spent 6 months storyboarding this, but having that input from the performers and changing it on the fly is really interesting.
Well, it's like you say, it wouldn't work that way. You can't just go walk on a set and go, no, this is the way it's supposed to be, do it this way.
Right.
It's like you won't get everyone's best work out of that. It has to be, the end product is to make the best movie. I mean, and it was in my career as a writer too, there was a process of me needing to understand, I'm not mailing my scripts out to people's homes so they can read them. It's like, all they see is what's on the screen. And at the end of the day, that's what you have. You have to make the movie, and you have to let, sometimes you have to let your ideas go. You have to have something you were really attached to on the page, and either on the day or in the editing room, you have to let that go. You have to go, it doesn't work, or if somebody has a better idea, let's run with that. And just to follow up on what Sean was saying about that kind of, working with Wyatt and Mari on the day, and Matt Shackman, who directed the first 2 episodes, that's half the battle. The second half is when you get in post. And it's like, now you've got to put the pieces together, and, this was, we originally had this budgeted for 8 shots, and the cut now has 17 shots. It's like, it becomes a whole, it's like an old cliche, you make the movie 3 times. You make it when you write it, when you shoot it, when you cut it.
But you have to provide that environment that people can feel like they can do that, right? And that I think I've been in this business long enough now to just acknowledge that there are people who are better and smarter at it than I am. And it's like, if they do their jobs well, they just make you look good. Typical Hollywood humble. There's other people smarter than I am. Something you never, ever hear.
Well, my very first job I ever worked on, the showrunner said to me, he goes, nothing makes me happier than finding someone who can write my show better than I can. He goes, because then I get my weekends back.
I love that. I mean, was there a visual effects element that you really kind of said, I don't know how we're going to pull this off?
All of them?
Yeah, I mean, like, a lot of the Axis Mundi stuff was a thing where we went into shooting that without a strong idea of what that was going to be, and the first day of shooting, I grabbed some footage from the camera and brought it home over the weekend and did some tests with it to see if this effect would work, and then, continued iterating on it for a couple weeks, and then we started thinking about, okay, if we fog up this forest and add a couple light banks hidden in places, this might actually give us a little bit more, tactility in the look of it. So we sort of evolved it as we were going. We had people who worked on most of the feature films on our show as supervisors, and so a lot of those things I can just implicitly trust the creative people that we're working with to make those decisions and make that stuff come to life. But it's a lot of more of those like creative challenges where you have something on a page and it's like, and it's a monster and it's scary,
right?
Or one thing that was really challenging was the gallery masks, which we had like an idea in the script, and then once we started trying to execute it, there was a whole bunch of technical challenges, and so that ended up being originally something that was a practical thing. Kentaro has this gallery with these projections on it and all of this stuff, and I think what was really interesting about that editorial process is we started to find the meaning behind the artwork in the edit, and then we're able to use the visual effects to like, subconsciously connect these ideas.
I think that wound up, I'm glad you mentioned that. I think that wound up actually being a better, more effective scene because the original way we were going to do it didn't work.
Yeah, and it's a lot about, we were able to, like, it's this art exhibit, and I think Kentaro just thinks it looks cool, right? He doesn't understand that he is analyzing his relationship with his father through his work. And it's this juxtaposition of faces and then him coming to grips with parts of himself that he doesn't like that are a part of his father, and also about this longing for his father. It's like, it's about intimacy, and that wasn't really, I think those themes were on the page, but we were able to really sharpen that by making it into a visual effect.
It became clear relatively early on this wasn't going to work, and then it was just one of those things we kept kicking down the road because we had so much other stuff we're doing. It's like, we'll figure it out. And then it was a lot of trial and error, a lot of expense, a lot of Sean's time and energy into something. And at the end of the day, it wound up making it a better scene and a deeper, richer scene. And Ren, who plays Kentaro, was great in it, and it really, dug something out of that character that, in a way that was really, surprising and revelatory, but that it was just such a giant pain in the ass that it took for, you would think that you're spending all this time and money and effort getting Godzilla right, and it was these damn masks in an art gallery.
It's that
it's
challenge.
like it just took it was like, oh my God.
In terms of the monsters, they're iconic designs, and they've been in a few movies now and other things. But is there any kind of like, you get to design new monsters, which must have been cool. But I would have also been like Chris, could we put him in a little hat? Like, can we make the design a little bit different than the other ones? And did you was there any kind of stamp that you put on your version of Godzilla?
We got to go to Toho Studios, which was like, for us, was like a pilgrimage to go and walk through that studio lot, and they have a statue of Godzilla out front. We all got our pictures taken with it, and it was, that this was where all these movies were made, and where Akira Kurosawa worked, and where The Seventh Samurai was made, and all this stuff. It's like really incredible. But they're very, between Toho and Legendary, there was a lot of fidelity to the design. We were given some pretty strict guardrails about what we could and could not do with the signature characters, and they do refer to them as characters. But where we had the freedom and the latitude was in like the Ice Titan and the other things that we're making on our own.
Yeah.
With Godzilla specifically, like it's interesting. In that 1954 scene, there's some fan reaction online that speculates that he's smaller than he actually was. And we had talked about doing that, and we were like, well, that doesn't make sense for X, Y, and Z reasons, so we didn't do that. But then just the way that the storyboards came in and the way that everything lined up, everything is the correct scale, but there's just a trick of the eye where he feels a little smaller.
And we actually had a pitch for why Godzilla is bigger. We were messing with sacred canon, and they wouldn't let us do it. So
yeah,
it was like,
I mean, there's like stuff in, soft canon and comics that we wanted to like respect and all of that kind of stuff. So the things that we did with the asset is like we get closer to his spines in the 2014 version of him. So we added a whole bunch of detail into those. We, like in the desert when he stands up, he's all dusty. So that's a different variation of his look, and all of those things kind of contribute to our Godzilla. It's in line with everything else, but we get to see different sides of him.
Yeah. Mari, what was it like? I mean, your role is on a very specific kind of like slice of this narrative, and I was wondering what it was like for you, not only seeing all the creatures and everything that Sean and the team put in, but also the entire 2014 storyline, like in the final show.
Yeah, I get asked what was the most surprising aspect of doing a big show like this, and I think the most surprising thing is seeing the final product and being like, oh, that's what I was chasing, or that's what I was reacting to, because it's all tennis balls and, imaginary. So a lot of the fun of the process was really trying to understand what this monster meant to my character, because each monster is, I guess, different. Like, I think the fun of it for us in the 1950s was that there's no established relationships with like humans and monsters yet. We get to discover it. So that was really fun. It's not a world where Godzilla already exists. So it was really exciting, and we could embody that excitement and fear and all of these things. So getting to see that was a surprise. And then seeing the 2015 timeline, you know, I get asked, like, was that in your brain when you were like acting, you know, throughout the show? And my response to that is that my character doesn't know her grandkids exist. So
Right.
I didn't really have to, or I chose not to focus on that. So, you know, it was a completely separate world. And I think that helped me in regard to coming to episode 9, 10 and getting to work with the, you know, 2015 cast. The surprise of it and the unknown, like the really going into the unknown, like I don't know these like people. So her entering a world where her grandkids are grown up and close in age to her, like I think it worked in my favor.
Casting Mari, who is sort of the heart of the show, but is, you know, off screen for several episodes. I mean, what is that? What was that like for you? And
That was a long process, like Mari said, because there was a lot of mixing and matching, and I think we were focusing on trying to get Anna's character first, so that because it was really important that you saw them as two separate women, even though it's Anna's grandmother, right? And two different personalities as well. So. For me, I always look at it like you're putting a puzzle together. And so, you know, the first piece of the puzzle was obviously the Lee Shaw piece. And then we had to build the family around that. And then we had, Anders, who is fantastic, who had to be John Goodman as a young man. We were looking for Kentaro, and Ren had never done anything before.
Yeah. That must have been a big leap.
Yeah, it was crazy. His audition, I'll never forget this, because he said, I'm sorry, I'm a little tired. I was up late last night. And so I said, what were you shooting? And he, because I thought he was on a movie set. And he said, oh, no, I work as a line cook. And we were like, wow, this is crazy. You speak unbelievable English. You're really handsome. And hey, you can actually act. And so that was a crazy big risk, too, because we had to send him to Vancouver to act with Kurt Russell. But he did it.
Yeah. I know you guys are about to embark on the next part of the saga. And Mari, are you excited about being in the mix now? You're kind of channeling Encino Man or something. You've been out of time. Now you're back in the world. Yeah.
Oh my God, there's so much to explore in that regard, right? Because who doesn't want to play a person who comes from the past?
Yeah.
Very excited. I don't think I'm allowed to say anything.
No, probably not. But your reemergence adds such a great new dynamic and a new drama to the established cast. Chris, was this always sort of a plan from the beginning?
Yeah, I think it was. It's funny now we talk about this. This was like when Matt Fraction and I first started breaking the story. That was like 4 years ago, and I'm like, yeah, I think it was. But no, I think we always knew from the beginning when at the end of that pilot when she disappears down that chasm that she wasn't dead. I mean, we always knew we wanted to bring her back, and I think as we broke the first season, we had a bunch of different versions of the finale, like who went to get her and who survived and who didn't, and it was an evolving process when we got to the end of the season. But I think we always knew this character was going to return. But then, and it provided such a great finale and kind of a cliffhanger moment to the end of the season. But then, of course, and we were just running full steam ahead, trying not to get run over by the freight train to get through season 1. And then it was like, oh my God, it turned out so good, we're so happy. And then it's like, okay, what are you guys going to do for the second season? And we were like, it's like, it's a tremendous opportunity, but it's also a tremendous challenge, because now we have this character who's, interacting with the other characters in a way that they hadn't before. And now we have all new dynamics and relationships and challenges, and those relationships are fraught and damaged in ways that, you know, are going to be incredibly fun and dramatic to explore, but also it's the challenge of, you know, upping our game.
Right. And Ronna, are you coming back? What is it going to be like to put more folks with?
I don't think I'm allowed to talk about it, but I am coming back.
Okay, you are coming back. But now you have the new challenge, right? Which is like, who's going to fit in with everybody
Yeah.
that you've already established?
Yeah, no, that is a really good question. I don't have the
Something
answer.
you are puzzling over right now.
We're literally in the midst of it.
Yeah, we're
right
in the
now.
we're in the thick of it now. But I just want to say just to that, in terms of, I guess, on the theme of collaboration.
Yeah.
We had such an amazing team. You know, we had a great crew in Vancouver. We're not shooting in Vancouver this season. We're moving production to Australia, so we're losing a lot of our people, which is heartbreaking. But we're retaining as many of our key creatives, our department heads, Sean, Ronna, obviously our cast. Caroline Hanania, who's our amazing production designer, is many of the key people. It becomes, it's a cliche to say it, but it becomes like a family.
Yeah.
But you get a shorthand, you get a rhythm, you know each other, you know what you know, people know what you like and what you don't like and what you're going to respond to and what you won't, and you know, keeping as much of the team together as we can to keep playing, it was incredibly important to me.
Sean, you excited? You started doodling some monsters on some cocktail napkins?
Oh, we're past the doodles.
Yeah,
we're
all right,
way
okay.
past the
Okay.
dueling.
You know, I was brought in very, very early. I got involved like November 2021, and part of it was, you know, one, figuring out the cost of this darn thing, but then also, you know, we wanted to get into concepting as quickly as possible the moment we had anything kind of coalescing, and so we you know, as this process has been going, before we even had a full script, we've been starting to concept out the monsters, because these things need a lot of runway to get right.
And it was such a global kind of collaboration on the first season. I'm assuming that's going to continue from visual effects on down.
Well, yeah, I mean, the show was for Apple's global division, and it was incredibly, I mean, Godzilla obviously is a very culturally Japanese character, very important, but also has a massive global audience, and we wanted the show, it was one of the reasons we went to Japan and shot in Tokyo, was incredibly important to us, and also just an amazing, great experience to work there. But we wanted the show to have a global reach, to feel like it was a big globe-trotting adventure, that these characters moved all around the world following on this quest.
Yeah, Mari, you talked about the importance of your character and Godzilla to Japanese culture. What was it like seeing the response to the show?
It means so much to me personally, because my father is of the generation that saw the original Godzilla 1952 film in theaters as a kid, and then getting to play a woman in the 1950s and getting to talk to him about, do you think like she would talk like this, like, you know, how she would respond, and like what that time period was like really special. In the American films, like, I think there's different ways to like approach these like monsters, right? Like in Japan, it's with -1 as well. You saw, you know, it really went back to the origin of the character, and to be able to merge like the American perspective and the Japanese perspective in this show is really like exciting to me. We haven't seen a Japanese character like this before in Hollywood, especially when I first read the script. I thought, is this allowed? Like a Japanese woman can be in like the center of Hollywood classic film, right?
Yeah.
She's in like the center of this, and meanwhile she has her own story and backstory, and you know, she's so driven and all of these things. It was a dream character. So like, especially hearing from Japanese women, like, you know, how it meant, what it meant to them, to see them represented in that way, it's everything to me. Yeah.
I love that. Well, let's all thank our amazing Monarch team.